Hey, what's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Daily Recap, where we give you a recap of all of the hot topics that we covered that day. You can catch them in their long format and also catch it fully streaming for free on Apple Podcasts. Let's get into today's topic, okay? You know that people have been roasting and toasting two of the NBA's roadrunners in Kevin Durant and LeBron James after they went up there, especially KD, went up there and just put his foot, he put 3 shoes and a basket in his mouth, where he tried to make fun of Michael Jordan retiring the first time in 1993 without mentioning the fact that he had lost his father. And as he's up there making fun of the guy for going playing baseball, he didn't mention the fact that his father was the reason he wanted to go play baseball, because his dad always wanted him to play. He didn't mention any of that. And then you got LeBron James in the background cackling like a pack of hyenas from Lion King or something like that. So you had that. The internet came out and destroyed KD. Destroyed him. And then there's an audio surfacing of him doing an about face after his ridiculous comments there, right? So apparently there's some type of golf tournament going on somewhere in the United States. I don't know. I've never played. I tried to play golf once, and I'm like, man, yeah, you're gonna need a lot of patience, and you're gonna need a lot of time. Who knows? Maybe I'll start playing it next year. Who knows? If I have free time. Who knows, right? But anyway, so there's some golf tournament going on, and Dan Patrick is interviewing various NBA players. I got a chance to hear a little bit from him when he spoke to Grant Hill, but then he sat down with Charles Barkley. And whenever anybody puts a microphone in front of Charles Barkley, you already know it's going to be fireworks, folks. And in this particular case, it was no exception. So they were talking about basketball and the game and how the game is today and all of that, and you people, the KD and all of that. And then Charles Barkley absolutely destroys the ungrateful players of the NBA today who trash players like Larry Bird and all of them, and basically pointed out the NBA would not be what it is today had it not been for the contribution of players like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Michael Jordan. And I'm like, this is what we need to hear. We need to get some pushback to all of this nonsense that's being propagated out here by these new NBA media guys. Exactly what Charles Barkley had to say on the Dan Patrick Show. And I'm going to come back and react to his comments. Take a listen to Charles Barkley here.
Magic had James Worthy and Kareem, and Magic is great. You know, we owe all our success in the NBA to Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. They're the two most important people in NBA history. They're the reason the NBA makes some money today. Obviously, Michael took it to a whole nother level. But if it wasn't for Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, the NBA wouldn't be what it was today, plain and simple.
What if Bird doesn't injure his back?
Well, he still is one of the greatest players ever. I mean, you know.
Because what was it, a 10-year career?
I think it was more than that. But you have to factor in, though, then the physicality of the game. We all had to go to college for 3 and 4 years. You know, these guys, number one, bless these guys. They make a deal how long they play. Number one, they never went to college. And also, there's no physicality. You have to factor in these guys I played 3 years of college. I think Bird played 4 years of college. Michael played 3 years of college. Tim Duncan played 4 years of college. David Robinson played 4 years of college. So the guys talk about, well, these guys, like I say, and listen, it's a different game now because no physicality, but you have to factor in all the years some of these guys lost going to college. You know, I think Bird went to college. I mean, he went to 2 or 3 schools, if I remember correctly, before he went to Indiana State. But Bird, man, he was amazing.
Excellent. So you heard what Charles Barkley had to say. Charles is essentially saying the NBA that we know today was built on the back of players like Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and players like Michael Jordan, who took it to a different level. I saw a graphic the other day on Instagram that was chronicling some of the highest paid players in the NBA over the years. At one point, players were earning less than $1 million, $1 million, $1.5 million, I think at one point I saw Patrick Ewing earning $3 million, $4 million. Patrick Ewing, a top 75 guy, to the point where now you have players like Karl Anthony Towns that are earning probably 10 times that amount, right? But had it not been for these guys that laid the foundation, players like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, who saved the NBA, there would be no NBA to talk about. Now, here's the irony of all of this. All of the guys that take shots at players in the past never would have had that same impact had you put them in the past. All of these guys, like your JJ, they would have been ancillary. They would not have even mattered. They would not have even moved the needle. But yet they're up there flapping their gums. This is the reason why I don't like JJ Redick. JJ Redick benefits by the players and eras that he trashes. JJ Redick is a multimillionaire because those guys brought money into the sport. But then wants to say something critical about them and dismiss them. That's why I can't stand people like JJ Redick. Never will. And all these other bozos that put their foots in their mouth whenever they try to talk about players in the past. Players that signed $100 million contracts, bro. Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson never signed a $100 million contract. He never did. And clearly he did more for basketball than any one of these dudes talking. But yet you guys want to make fun of him? And I'm just happy that we're hearing from a guy that would have been good in any era, even this era, pushing back on some of these players' nonsense. Charles is saying you guys need to knock it the hell off. You need to knock it off and show some respect and reverence. KD was up there saying his ridiculous comments, like as if Michael Jordan is not the reason you even have a shoe deal. Like as if it's not Michael Jordan and players like him from his era that made us even care about basketball players like you. But you up there making fun of him. And you got all of these other NBA guys making fun of him. But they benefited from the league that they built. And one can make a serious argument that these guys today are not even laying a foundation for those in the future. We can make a serious argument for that. How do I know that? Look at their commitment to the sport. I just heard some comments recently from Ricky Rubio talking about the number one talking point in NBA locker rooms is who has the better car, who has the nicer watch. He's like, doesn't even seem to be a love for the game anymore. He said he's noticing that also in the European leagues. This is where the game is now. It's no longer about the love of the game. Look at how players perform in the All-Star weekend. They don't care anymore. So what do you think the next generation is going to do and feel? And Charles Barkley's calling these guys out, and I am happy that somebody's calling out these ridiculous talking points that these guys try to propagate. You guys let me know what you think about it. I recently came across a conversation that Charles Barkley had on the Dan Patrick show. He was attending some type of golf tournament or something like that. And they've had various NBA players on there. I saw a little bit of what Grant Hill had to say, talking about Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant's competitive streak and all of that. But then Charles dropped in, I think, for like a 40-minute conversation, if I'm not mistaken. So he spoke about everything. He spoke about teams that he thought would be good this coming season. He spoke about the impact that players like Larry Bird and Michael Jordan and, Magic Johnson had on the league. And then it got to the point where he was talking about his own personal career and how he viewed himself as a basketball player. As you guys know, Charles Barkley was a bad boy. Like, he was a bad boy. And he was talking about the fact that he always felt like he was better than everybody. And he said that he just knew that if he had an opportunity to get some good players, he would be able to prove that. So the year he came into the season where he faced Michael Jordan, the Suns faced the Bulls in the finals, Charles made it a point to say, I'm going to prove to everybody that I'm the best player in the world. And he said, we're going to go to the finals and we're going to prove it. So the Phoenix Suns get to the finals. And Charles Barkley said to himself, nobody's better than me. Michael Jordan ain't better than me. He then begins to describe this series from game one to its conclusion. And the conclusion he came to at the very end was that Michael Jordan is the undisputed greatest basketball player to ever play the sport. That was his conclusion. So what I want to do is play exactly what Charles had to say here. I want you guys to listen to it, and I'm going to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to what Chuck had to say there.
Dan, let me tell you this, and I've talked about this publicly before. I did not think Michael Jordan was better than me until he beat me in the finals. Because when I was in Philly, we actually had success against them. And then they got good. And then they beat us in the playoffs one year. But I thought it was just because he had some better players around him. When I got traded to Phoenix, I says, Chuck Daly had told me, he says, you're the second best player in the world. I says, I'm the best player in the world. He says, no, that guy right over there is the best player in the world. I said, well, I'm going to prove it to your ass this year when we play them in the finals. He says, Chuck says, I didn't realize how great you were, except getting to watch you play every day, how easy the game is for you. You can play with anybody. This is doing the Dream Team practice. And I said, Chuck, I'm the best player in the world. I'm going to prove it to you. I said, we're going to play the Bulls in the finals. And I remember telling the guys that going in training camp, I said, we're going to play the Bulls in the finals. He said, how you know that? I said, because I'm the best damn player in the world, and I'm going to prove it. I said, we're going to play the Bulls, and I'm going to prove I'm the best player in the world. And I remember going home after game 2. My daughter was upset, crying, because we lost the first 2 games. I says, hey, just relax. We're going to be fine. I said, but I got to tell you something. I ain't never said this in my life. I think that guy might be better at basketball than I am. And I said, but I think I'm better, and we'll be fine. Then we win game 3, lose game 4, win game 5, come back home for game 6. And my daughter, I says, I told you, I think I'm the best player in the world, and I'm going to prove it. And then they beat us. I remember telling her, I says, I ain't never said this to you before. That guy's better at basketball than me. And that's the first time I'd ever, because it's a team game. But once I got Dan Marlin and Kevin Johnson, I said, we can beat anybody. We can beat anybody. But, yeah, I thought Michael Jordan was a better player than me. That's the only player I ever played against I thought was better than me.
So you heard what Charles Barkley had to say. What are my thoughts about this? I think Charles is saying something that's quite obvious. First thing is, he spoke about the fact that you have to believe in yourself and all of that. I 100% concur. But for him to come to the realization that, look, this guy is better than me, and he's the best ever, I think speaks volumes about Charles and his honesty. The fact is, folks, Michael Jordan is the greatest player that ever played basketball. He's the greatest and the best. However you want to describe it, he's all of it. He's the greatest, certainly, and he is the best, certainly. I want to put it into context for you guys to understand the caliber of player we're dealing with. The 2 jackasses that recently made fun of Michael Jordan were LeBron James and Kevin Durant. And I brought up a point in one of the shows where I was reacting to his comments and LeBron laughing in the background, where I started to kind of compare Jordan to both of those guys. And people seem to enjoy my take on that, and I think some people wanted me to go a little bit further. So, because some people have messaged me on Instagram. By the way, if you're not following me on Instagram, my handle is CTABANZ. Make sure you follow me on there. And people wanted me to really break this thing down. Let me just put into context just how great Michael Jordan is. Because some people have tried to say, well, LeBron is good because all of these longevity stats, and they're confusing some things. LeBron has more milestones. MJ has more accolades. Milestones have everything to do with time, right? You can accumulate like stupid milestones. The most turnovers, that's a milestone. It's a cumulative stat that you accrue over time, right? So it's just a milestone. Whereas Jordan had the accolades. I want to put it into context for you, the caliber of player that we are discussing here today, guys. Let's take LeBron James and Kevin Durant as an example. Michael Jordan has, if you combine KD and LeBron's MVPs, Jordan has that same amount. If you combine their finals MVPs, Jordan has that same amount. If you combine the times they led the league in steals, Jordan has more because those guys never did it. If you combine their scoring titles, the people that call KD the greatest scorer of all time, Jordan has more scoring titles than both of those guys. Jordan has more seasons where he won the Finals MVP, championship MVP, made all first team. He has way more seasons than all of those guys. Jordan averages more regular season points than both of those guys. Jordan averages more playoff points than both of those guys. He has all of that. You could literally combine the accolades of Kevin Durant and LeBron James, and that gives you Michael Jordan. I want you guys to think about what I just said. If you combined Kevin Durant's and LeBron's accolades, it would amount to Michael Jordan's accolades. That is the caliber player. And here's the kicker. Jordan was able to do what these guys did in 15 years. In 15 years. He was able to do it. In 15 years. These guys have a combined almost 40 years of combined playing time in basketball in the NBA. Almost 40 years. I want you to think about that. Almost 40 years of basketball time in the NBA. And they have not accomplished as much as Michael Jordan did. I want you to ponder that. If you combine LeBron's career in the NBA, you combine Kevin Durant's career, you combine the times, they still, somehow, some way, have not been able to reach that guy. Not individually, not cumulatively, not combined. That's the caliber of player we're talking about. From an eye test standpoint, there is nothing to talk about. There's nothing. I've seen them all, folks. There's nothing. Jordan was absolutely more impressive than Kevin Durant. Absolutely more. And he is a better scorer. Period. End of story. It's not even close. Michael Jordan scored 37 points in a season and made 12 threes. What does it say about your 50, 40, 90 is irrelevant. He scored 37 a game and made 12 threes in a season. What does that say about your 57? No. He made 6. It's either 6 or 12 in a season. They're not on his level. They're not. Kevin Durant came to his senses and realized they're not on his level. They're not. This is the caliber of player we're talking about. This is who Charles Barkley is describing. He's the best by far. So let's get into today's topic. So today we're going to be talking about a fellow that we haven't spoken about in quite some time. And that person is Shannon Sharpe. Now, as you guys know, Shannon Sharpe, less than 6 months ago, was one of the biggest things in sports media. He had one of the best podcasts, 2 best podcasts in the business. He was on ESPN First Take, one of the biggest morning shows, sports talk shows in the morning. In that time slot, I think the number 1. So Shannon Sharpe was on top of the world, right? But then a crazy case came out against him, lawsuit came out against him, where it was alleging some pretty salacious, crazy things by a OnlyFans model. Then audio started to come out and all kind of crazy things. And then we later on found out that the plaintiff was being represented by Tony Busby, who Vlad undressed on the Piers Morgan show not too long ago. So that came out. We then later on heard that Shannon Sharpe was being sued for $50 million. We also heard that he offered her $10 million to settle out of court. They rejected that. Once we got the news that he was in place to sign up for a $100 million contract, then obviously he stepped away from ESPN First Take, and he hasn't been on the show since. Then he was doing the Club Shay Shay show, and then now we haven't seen him on Club Shay Shay for a number of days now. And the reason we haven't seen Shannon Sharpe on Club Shay Shay was because he now started, the lawsuit against him had started, and he went to court to defend himself. So I came across an article here that stunned me with the headline. This is from complex.com, says, Shannon Sharpe's accuser's attorney a no-show in court for first appearance. And I said, what? Okay, so let's get into what this report had to say. It says Shannon Sharpe's accuser attorney was a no-show in a downtown Las Vegas courtroom, forcing the case to be adjourned for 45 days. The Las Vegas CBS affiliate KLS TV was on hand in the courtroom on Wednesday, July 9th. Clark County District Court Judge Ann Albertson granted an adjournment on the case for 45 days after ex-NFL star's attorney Robert DeMarco requested it on the client's behalf. Then continues on. A follow-up hearing is scheduled for September 3rd in the same courthouse. Judge Albertson was reported to be disappointed that no one from the plaintiff's side appeared on the client's behalf, prompting some legal analysts to speculate that things were looking good for the accuser. Speaking to the CBS affiliate, attorney Robert, who does not represent either side, said that it was not in Sharpe's accuser's best interest to not appear in court. Whether to set up a settlement conference or set hearings for litigation, you'd expect all parties to be present, he said. I can't see a tactical advantage to be gained by failing to appear. However, he also speculated that it wasn't clear sailing for Sharpe either. DeMarco, who appeared in court on his client's behalf, informed the judge that the other attorneys on his client's case were attending to other matters. Sharpe's legal team is predominantly based in New York, which his lawyer suggests may be viewed unfavorably by the judge. Generally, it's better to have a homegrown counsel, he said. If you have a matter pending in Nevada, it's best to have Nevada counsel. Jane Doe filed a lawsuit against Sharpe back in April of 2025, accusing Club Shay Shay host of multiple counts of assault, sexual assault, battery, and sexual battery. Following the filing, Sharpe's legal team accused her of engaging in a shakedown against the Pro Football Hall of Famer. Sharpe himself released a statement. Okay, so then that's what you guys pretty much got the gist of it. So what this article is saying is that Shannon Sharpe showed up to court in Nevada. He gets there with his legal defense. Then the accuser's attorney doesn't show up. His lawyer then says to the judge, these people are not serious. Can this thing be postponed for another month and a half, please? These people are absolutely not serious. Now, what does all of this mean? This is a shocking U-turn, and I'm going to tell you why we put that in the title. If you listen to what was coming out before, and them suing him for $50 million, one would have thought they would have been the first people, they would have been opening up the court with the janitors, getting ready to get to work. So for them to not show up speaks volumes about what they're alleging against Shannon Sharpe. Because if you guys were truly serious about it, how don't you show up in court? Now, this lawyer is saying that, Shannon is not in the clear because he doesn't have lawyers from so-and-so state. I don't know how much that really matters and all of this. At the end of the day, I don't think a judge is going to make a decision based on where the lawyers originate. I think ultimately the judge or a jury is going to make a decision on a case based on the merits of the case, right? And if you cannot even establish the fact that you're serious about this case to even show up to court and get the case adjourned for 45 days, that says a lot about whether or not we need to be taking you guys seriously and this lawsuit serious. It doesn't mean that what the accuser alleges is not true, but my gosh, that's a very sloppy, horrible way to get it started. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to focus on is on this, because some people may say, well, Shannon is good. There's a fundamental problem with this. Why? Because Shannon Sharpe had said originally that his goal was to be back when? By the start of NFL season. Well, if this thing gets adjourned to September 5th, NFL season would have been started by then, if I'm not mistaken, which now further jeopardizes his possible return to ESPN. Even Stephen A. Smith has said Shannon Sharpe, he's looking for it, hoping that he'll be able to return by the beginning of NFL season, countdown, or whatever the hell they call it. I don't watch the NFL. Right? So yes, it's a win for him in the sense that the prosecution doesn't look serious. But now what this also does is that it elongates this process. It prolongs it. And if I'm in the shoes of Shannon Sharpe, I want to get this thing resolved as quickly as possible. As quickly as possible. That would be my stance on the situation. Now, look, what does this mean for him coming back to his show? I would assume he would come back to his show. I don't know. I really don't know. But it's a win for Shannon in the sense that it looks like he's dealing with unserious people. but it's something that's still going to drag out. And that may not be something or a situation that he wants to find himself in. Because based on what he said, he believes, him and his legal counsel, believe that this thing is a shakedown. And if you believe it's a shakedown, you either want to get this case dismissed or deal with it as quickly as possible. And a part of Tony Busby and these guys, bro, that's up. I mean, they're saying that she's being represented. Let me just see quickly, Shannon Sharpe. Yeah, they're saying she's being represented by Tony Busby. Tony Busby was made to look like an absolute buffoon on Piers Morgan when he was up there talking with Vlad, because Vlad was like, all of these frivolous lawsuits that you levied against Diddy, none of them were picking up by the FBI, the feds. So why didn't they use any of your accusers, right? And then he goes, you brought up this ridiculous lawsuit against Jay-Z and Diddy. That fell through the cracks. Right, so Tony Busby pushed back. Hey, man, we just settled on a $640 million lawsuit. Like, yeah, I'm happy for you, but what does this have to do with any of the accusers that you brought against Diddy? So this is the same Tony Busby that we're dealing with. Now, maybe they have a master plan up their sleeve. Maybe they missed their flight. Who knows? We're gonna have to wait and see. But as things stand now, this is a win for Shannon to begin with. But it takes a sharp U-turn. Based on all the things that were coming out and all the audios that were dropping and all this, you would have thought these people would have been ready to show up in the morning at 4 a.m. and been waiting outside the courthouse to get this thing going. For them to not even show up, that says a lot. Now, I forgot what show we were doing that we did a show that was centered on some comments that Charles Barkley was making about Michael Jordan, and then I was thinking about what's going on with LeBron and this situation is potentially leaving the Lakers and all of that, and the back and forth between LeBron fans, Kobe fans, Laker fans. Everybody's just been talking about it. And then we also produced a show that was centered on what Nick Wright had to say yesterday about why he believes the Lakers are unhappy, LeBron James is unhappy with the Lakers. So then I started to think back about Nick Wright and how much of a Kobe Bryant hater he had been. I remember the time Nick Wright went after Kobe because LeBron James, he basically said LeBron was trying to shape the narrative to other things instead of winning championships. That's what Kobe Bryant has said. And he was basically saying, if you're LeBron James, you got to figure it out. And Nick Wright went off, right? Nick Wright was the first person I ever heard in sports media say that at no point in time, Kobe Bryant was ever the best player in basketball. That's when I knew I needed to stop taking Nick Wright seriously. That was when I decided, okay, this guy is not serious. But one of the things that people don't realize is that a lot of the LeBron fans don't like Kobe because they feel like Kobe is more respected than LeBron, and even Jordan respects Kobe more than LeBron James, right? And one of the people that pointed this out was Nick Wright. Now, when did he point this out? If you guys remember, when LeBron passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the scoring record, it was supposed to be this big thing. Everybody was supposed to be, wow, this is a seminal moment in the sport. And they tried to build it up as some very big thing. But what ended up happening was the moment lasted for as long as it lasted, which was pretty much the duration of the basketball game. And don't forget, the Lakers lost that game. And in fact, storylines that came out subsequently were, why didn't Anthony Davis stand up and cheer and stuff like that? And I think Nick Wright and a lot of the Clutch guys and LeBron fans thought that this was going to be some big moment where people would come to this realization like, wow, you see, LeBron is just in a realm by himself and he's better than Jordan. Look what he just did. When in reality, the vast majority of NBA fans didn't care because they thought that scoring title was going to be the thing that put LeBron over the top, because LeBron knew that it would be very difficult to catch Jordan in rings. So now he started to go for individual accolades, which became abundantly clear. Hence the reason Kobe made those comments. But we've always known that NBA fans generally don't respect LeBron, but it seems like LeBron fans know it as well. And Nick Wright himself basically started crying on TV and on his podcast when he had to publicly admit that NBA fans don't respect LeBron James the way they do Kobe Bryant. So we want to play two sounds. The first sound is of him crying on his podcast about the fact that nobody respects LeBron. And the second one was with him actually saying it on Speak with his, First Things First with Kevin Wiles and Chris Broussard, where he says, he said if Kobe had passed Kareem in the scoring title, it would have been more of a big deal, and nobody seems to care that LeBron James did it. Take a listen to Nick right here.
He's 150 points away from passing Kareem. And it seems like the media collectively has decided we're not treating this like a big deal. For the last 40 years, every single day, the NBA's all-time scoring leader has been Kareem. It was thought of as a truly unbreakable record up to and including 5, 6, 7 years ago. The longer the timeline goes, the more people are going to think Michael Jordan being the greatest ever is ludicrous. History's going to look at it and say, why is Jordan the best? People will be like, well, he has 6 championships. It's like, oh, that's the most? No, there's this guy named Bill Russell. He has 11. He scored 32,000 points. Oh, who has the most? LeBron, how many did he score? 44,000. The gap between Jordan and LeBron is bigger than the gap between Jordan and Paul Pierce. Nobody seems to care.
What I'm going to say is this quickly. Because it's of LeBron's larger-than-life persona and his greatness, he has made this record more than it really has ever been. And with all due respect to Kareem, it now is a bigger record because he has it, and rather than it was before.
So this is where I stand on the NBA record book, because I do feel like so much of NBA history is reverse engineered to tell the Michael Jordan story. The reason that if this record doesn't matter, then what we are, or I know you're not saying doesn't matter, but isn't, a top tier record, then I think what we're saying is the NBA has one record people care about, 100 points in a game, and that's it. And I disagree. Because you can't point to anything else. And the only logical reason I can find for that is because the guy most people have considered as the greatest player ever doesn't hold any of the records. But I am as certain as I am that I am sitting here right now, that if Kobe Bryant had broken this record, it would be treated as if it were the most important record in league history. Certainly, if Michael Jordan had broken this record, it would be treated as if it were the most important record in NBA history. So I would just ask, if this record isn't something, then does the NBA have no records that matter?
So you heard what Nick Wright said. Nick, this all boils down to one simple word. And that word is respect. Fans respected those guys more. You can't buy respect, Nick. You can't twerk your way up you can't twerk it up and get respect. You can't pour honey all over each other's booties and get respect. You can't bombard NBA fans with a whole bunch of paid analysts saying one nonsense after the other and think you're going to generate respect. It doesn't work like that. It's either people have it for you or they don't. And a lot of it has to do with the fact of whether or not people think you are sincere. They don't respect LeBron, bro. They don't. The way you would have thought. So you saying that it would have been a bigger deal if Kobe Bryant did? Yeah, it probably would have been a bigger deal. Because Kobe was more respected, man. A lot of the way people feel about LeBron has to do with a lot of just smoke and mirrors and you guys trying to manufacture this thing. People know the real, Nick. Even LeBron knows he's not respected. LeBron James knows he's not respected. Do you know how I know? Because he said it at the end of that post game when he won the finals in 2020. He said, I want my respect. He knows he's not respected. So the question is, why, Nick? Why? What about LeBron is it that people don't respect? They don't respect the 40,000. Nobody cares, bro. You guys are just up there bringing up one milestone after the other that nobody cares about. Haven't you asked yourself the question, if him passing Kareem was the end, was the end all be all end all, rather, why didn't everybody come to that conclusion? The fact of the matter is the scoring title was never it. People care about what you did in your prime, but you guys are trying to bend the conversation into something else, which is now longevity, when that was never the conversation. You're trying to shift the goalpost. This is Nick Wright admitting it. But then Kobe's jealous of LeBron. Make it make sense. Nick believed that Kobe's jealous of LeBron, but meanwhile, nobody respects LeBron. Why would Kobe be jealous of a person nobody respects? Does that make sense? Who was the one that Jordan took under his wing and brought into the fold? Was it not Kobe? Wasn't it LeBron that's always said he would love to have a relationship with Michael Jordan? Who did Michael Jordan always have a relationship? Was it not Kobe? But Kobe's jealous of LeBron. What is Kobe jealous about? Would Kobe have to be jealous about? What? That he doesn't have paid shills in media that go out there and lie on his behalf. They call LeBron the GOAT. He has to be jealous of that. Kobe knows the deal, bro. We all know. Y'all are just a bunch of paid actors on TV. I got sources in the NBA too that have told me a lot of these guys are paid under the table to say this stupid nonsense that they say. But here you have it, folks. Nick Wright publicly admitting that nobody respects LeBron in comparison to Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. That's him saying it. That's not me.